If I want to communicate a really high level of quality, then everything that my client or potential client encounters within the space that I'm hosting them should reinforce that message of quality.
You're listening to the One Man Business Podcast, brought to you by Rod Fancy. Everything you need to know to run your own show.
Welcome everybody to One Man Business Podcast. My name is Rod Fancy. I'm a web designer, and I'm super excited to have here an expert in commercial photography, Justin Eckersall.
Thank you, Rod. That's right. Good job on the pronunciation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I mean, man, it's so important that this podcast is made for solopreneurs, for entrepreneurs, people that are starting, people that need to know how to navigate to this crazy journey, which is build your business. It's really hard. So many things to get it done. So today, let's talk about photography. And you know what? As a designer, I can say that this is one of the things that we struggle with. It's hard. Like you ask business to provide, or you try to educate them on the importance of photography. Yeah. You were talking about this, before. It's so important to get it right. So to start,
yeah.
I wanted to educate us. I would say, me as well, the importance of having good photography, or to use the good practice of a good photography, the impact that this have in your business. Let's start with that, and then let's go through your background. But let's kick off with why we need to have this good photography. Yeah. What is a good photography?
Sure. It's easy to overlook because we're so saturated with images every day. We take lots of photos on our phone and this kind of thing. But I think that, we should probably start with the fact that, photography is our single most powerful communication tool, because, the human brain can process an image in 3/1000th of a second. Yeah. There's no text, or there's nothing I can do in writing or even video or anything else that's going to communicate that fast. So once we take that capability and that superpower of communication and we start getting very directed and targeted, then we can actually really harness the power of what this can do for us to communicate brand messages for companies, to communicate, what type of customers we're looking for, where the company is going, what the vision is for that company, what type of recruitment the companies are looking for, and really, it's I think also a resource that can sometimes be squandered by companies that really aren't utilizing it to its best ability. And then the flip side to this is that when companies are using images that are maybe irrelevant, often happens with stock photography. We just grab some images, we're like, yeah, that looks pretty good, we'll throw that in there.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not super relevant, or they use unprofessional photos, or they use photos that are maybe really out of date. Then all of those negative qualities really become associated with that company, and I think that's the risk. I think sometimes we make very quick decisions on what we're using for photos, and so we really want to flip that around, and we really want to do the opposite. We want to communicate a super professional company. We want to really clearly communicate what the branding is for that company, what their message is, and really create a vision that inspires confidence in customers to work with them. And it's unfortunately, like I said at the beginning, because we're so used to photos every day and on our phone and everything else, we have it can sometimes get overlooked in its importance.
Yeah, but these days, and I want to actually dive in your background now, because some of sometimes we have good stock. I mean, if you're going to pay a stock professional one, a stock photo, I don't know, like there's some platforms that are good, but it's still they don't give you a feedback, right? They don't tell you anything. You have to do all this job. Yeah. So what I feel sometimes, because I used to do that before. Okay, I have a project, a web project. Okay, so I just sent the link to my client, one of the ones that I trust. Yeah. Pick one, but they don't know how to pick one.
That's right.
right? They don't know if they should use people or just a location, like a background, if there is like nature associated with the brand, or if it's like architecture associated with the brand. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So I think with your background, and I want to ask you, because I know I keep saying, but it's just to put in context. I know how agency work. How does it work? Like, hiring freelancers or suppliers, or how does it work like a project? So there's always the briefing, right?
Yep.
Details on what. So I want to ask you to share the process that you use for big companies. For example, you work for big ones,
Sure,
big guys.
absolutely.
Can you mention some of them?
Yeah, sure. Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Bureau Veritas, which I think has 350,000 global employees. It's TD Wealth Management, C-SPAN. There's lots of big companies that I work for, but I also work for very small companies. Working with small companies, much like running a small company, can be very exciting, almost like having a sports car. You can make quick decisions, you can move quickly. The bigger the companies get, sometimes there's a lot more steps to get through and a lot more processes. And often some of these large companies have very specific briefs that I receive where all the photography has to fit within a very confined sort of format, which matches with their global branding.
The global branding.
So that has its merits as well. But regardless of whether I'm working with big companies or smaller companies, one of the interesting things for me is that when I work directly with companies, you mentioned agencies. When I'm not working with an agency, I'm working usually directly with a company. And one of the great things about working outside that agency model is I get to wear the art director's hat. And I do this a lot with web design companies like yourself. And so really those, and because I've done this for 20 years now, I tend to be pretty decent at pulling off some great concepts. And so those direct clients, I think, if anything, probably get more value out of me than anything because they're benefiting from the concept development. And the concept development is all surrounding about how to best communicate what that company is doing to its market and how to drive business. Because at the end of the day, people are coming to me because they want more revenue in the bank account. They want more. They want more business, and that's my job. So it's not just simply about making a pretty picture. We've got to really think about what it is that we're doing.
If you know what the user want, or the client or the customer want, and how do they connect to your company, the ways. So just to explain a little bit for you, if you listen and you don't know exactly how the process works in an agency. So usually how it works, and you went through this a lot. So you have this study of the brand, the positioning of the company in the market, and how we're going to, of course, deliver result, a solution, or a great outcome to those to this market. So this target audience want your product. You know how to position yourself. You just need to make sure that you are doing this with constantly, showing the same message, just being consistent on the message.
Absolutely.
And so they give the strategy, the brand strategy creates like a report, and these reports they come with some pillars of your brand, with the positioning, the statements, and also the image that are associated with the brand. So it's a really detailed report on how marketing division can actually run their campaigns align with this strategy. HR departments, they can run the campaign or hire the right people align with the values of the company. So this is a really important document. But small business, they don't have this, let's say, they don't have everything strategized. They're actually figuring out the business as they go, right? Yeah. So if they want to picture, I think that's really important. The value they have when they hire someone like you, like a professional photographer that have, this background. So a photographer that has this huge background on how branding works, they're actually getting so much value. It's much cheaper than going through the branding process and figuring all this out. And They're just like, okay, Justin, I want an image for my website. Your head's like exploding ideas, connecting dots. Okay, this guy, the target audience. Okay, branding, strategy, position, blah blah blah, and they don't have to do anything, right?
Yeah.
You are actually, with your experience, bringing them this. It's much more than an image.
Yeah.
So I think this is important for solopreneurs to understand. First of all, everything behind the click, right?
Yeah.
And also the value and how this impact the conversion. Because at the end of the day, like you said, people want to make more money.
That's right.
And people will click more, people will buy more if can relate to the image, if
That's
they
right.
can, right? Can you give an example of a lost prospect or a client that was like, oh my God, I don't know. And then it turns out that you gave like a great idea and everything changed. Like,
Sure, yeah. I think there's one is a company that I've worked with for about 10 years now. And when I started working with them, they'd already had some professional photography done, and it was very corporate-y looking and very clean and very, for those people that are older, very what I would expect 10 years ago of corporate photography. It was just, very, very clean and, to be honest, a little bit boring. So, these guys brought me in. These are they're a steel fabrication company. They make e-houses for large infrastructure projects, to everything from oil sands projects to dams and mines and that sort of thing. They build pump houses and e-houses. E-houses, of course, housing all electrical components for on-site at these large projects. And we did a couple of shoots, kind of looked at the photos. They were fine. But I thought, having gone into the company and seen it, I thought, they're having me do what they think they should do, but not what they needed, right? So I set up a meeting with the president of the company. I went in and I said, you know what? Like, I think what you guys have right now and what you've brought me in here to do, I think is just fine, but I don't think it's great. And here's what I think you should do. And so I pitched them on the idea of creating very edgy, really rock and roll type photos that basically make the staff on the floor with the welders and cutting metal and stuff. They look like they're on stage in a metal band.
Like rock stars.
Yeah, total rock stars. And the president loved it, and I was kind of expecting them to say something like, "Well, we'll do maybe a little bit of this, but we'll only go halfway." But he goes, "Go all the way. Just go run with this idea." Oh my God!
Right? For you, this is like
this is great. So we did all the stuff. And then, of course, we started to populate all the images in use, both in print and online, with these very edgy, very cool images. And what happened was, it started to get noticed within our industry that this company was doing something unlike anybody else in the industry, something really different. They got a lot of feedback on it. People were, really enjoying the work. But they had a really great unexpected benefit. And the unexpected benefit was that some of the best talented metal workers and welders in the Lower Mainland started going to this company and asking them for work because they saw these photos and they saw what this place was, and they're like, I want to be one of these rock star welders. I want to be one of these rock star metal workers. And so they started to attract really the best talented staff that they possibly could. It really had a transformational impact on the company. And on the web design front, they did some other interesting things, like they had a hacky sack counter on the homepage because all the welders like to play hacky sack at lunch. So every time they play a game, the counter goes up. It was amazing to kind of go through that process with them. And there's lots of examples of companies I worked with like this, but it's great to see it at the beginning and kind of where it goes and where it ends up, and part of it is really helping a company create a vision of where they want to go, and we can make it look like that before they've even got there, and then those images actually help pull them in that direction.
Wow, that's fantastic. So see, and I know because I work with some big companies actually doing a website for one manufacturing in North BC, and it's hard to hire people. It's competitive market. I mean, there's not enough good, let's say, professionals in this industry, and they really fight for those, like, for the great ones. So see, you kind of like fix a big problem. How much? I mean, it's not about the price of this. So see, it's not the price of the click. It's not about the photo shoot. It's about, like, the let's say the company's wealth.
Yeah,
maybe.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think this is important. I want to ask you. Okay, so can you share the process that you do? Because of course, most of the things are running, in your head. Like, it's experience, of course, but like the process for those that are considering doing, just like an overview of your process. How
Sure.
do you start? Like the brainstorm.
Well, it's not a simple answer, because the reality is that process is different for every single company. I can tell you, so right off the bat, some of the things that will affect the process in terms of what we're going to go through, and we can sort of put on one extreme, like a solopreneur, that it's just me and them, and we're just going out, we're just going to create some images. It's the two of us, and so we kind of brainstorm, come up with some concepts, look at where the images need to go, all that kind of stuff. That's probably the simplest case, and then from there we get all kinds of other things. So we might have the involvement of a company like your own, which we're a web design agency, and so they often have their own ideas, and so we have to sort of roll that in. It can be very involved, not involved at all, or somewhere in the middle, which is usually where it is. Then we have sometimes PR agencies or marketing or advertising agencies also may have a PR for sure. They might have a very specific mandate. This is the story we're trying to communicate about this company. This is where we're going. We want everything to fit within that theme. And then we've got the influence of in-house departments within companies. So everything from in-house marketing and communications and PR as well. And they often have their own ideas. So it's like a crazy recipe, right? So you got all of these bits and pieces going into this recipe and all of these ingredients, but at the end you need to bake a beautiful thing, right? So you gotta come up with something. So unfortunately, like a lot of things in professional photography, this and I'm sure that anybody listening to this that is embarking on this path, they're already starting to realize this. Is there's no simple one answer, and that every situation, probably very much like your web design, requires a different set of solutions and a different. So the process that we go through it can be super involved by me or very little involved. So on the other end of the extreme, from the solopreneur, just to kind of come full circle there, might be a situation where I'll give you an example of something that I've dealt with at Bureau Veritas, which is a very structured company. So we had an agency, 123 West, which is a well-known advertising agency here. They were managing a shoot that I did for them. We had the input from their Paris-based headquarters for the company, and they had sent a very detailed document of exactly how everything needed to look and exactly the style and the lighting and everything else. And so that was supplied to 123 West. They actually shared that with me, and then we had to create images that sort of fit within that brief. Then within that, we also had the input from their in-house marketing team locally. So now we've got the input from their head office, as well as the input from the local marketing team, as well as their PR person, and then of course the agency, and I'm in there too. And so now we have to create these great images for a very specific location. In this case, it was a brochure with all of these factors and all these influences and all of these constraints. Wow! And so and that's really great as well. There's sometimes a nice freedom with rules because it's very clearly defined. You know exactly what you're doing. And then my creativity is in technical execution of fitting within those parameters. So that's kind of the other end of the extreme from the solopreneur, where it's just the two of us working together.
As a creative, I do a lot of the works in different areas like music. I'm a songwriter. I do some paintings, and I'm a designer. But sometimes I want some straight directions, Sometimes I feel that sometimes I don't. It takes so much time if you don't have any, guidance. I don't know, but I totally understand that as a photographer.
Yeah.
I think you like to have a little bit of both, right?
Sure.
I think it's good to have both.
Sometimes the scariest thing is that client like, yeah, it all looks great.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah,
Really?
well, come on, give me
some
how about
inputs
some
here.
direction? I'm fine with all that. Or just do whatever you want. I'm like, you say that now, but when we're done, you
Exactly. No, sometimes I when people say that, like, just do whatever you want. I was like, okay, I will, but tell me what you don't want.
Yeah, sure.
So at least I know, where I should not go.
That's where they'll tell you that at the end.
Yeah.
Like, well, I didn't want that. Like, well, you said you wanted anything.
It's hard, man. Sometimes it's hard. Creative work. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, man. I want to ask you, do you have... I know, of course, I always ask people to share with solopreneurs, if they don't have the budget, at least like a guidance, let's say top 5 tips to do at least, don't go wrong in those kind of things. So do you have like top 5 tips if you're not in a budget to hire you right now, maybe in the future?
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with, and I believe you might have done a podcast with Simon, headshot photographer.
Not yet, but I'm
so
considering. Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing that
That
came to
will,
mind
actually.
with that was actually headshots. That the headshots become kind of the new handshake, right? It's as soon as we go to work with somebody, we like, oh, I'm going to Google their name, right?
Yes.
Up pops LinkedIn and whatever else they have. And really, we're going to make an opinion about that person based on their image. We all do.
We
it.
will.
We'll look at a person like, man, they look like an asshole.
Well,
Or
definitely
hopefully not. Or that person looks like they'd be a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah.
And so I think if you've got a company, I think you really want to make sure that you've got some sort of headshot that kind of aligns with what your brand is. Preferably not a headshot, of you drunk on some holiday where you've just cut out
Halloween party.
cut out their
You
glass.
dress them.
and you can see the arm on the shoulder.
Yeah. These are the worst. I'm sorry.
So-
if you have one of those, please.
Get rid of it.
Yeah.
Or even worse, if you have no photo at all. Right?
Yeah.
Nothing sends the message of I just don't give a shit than not having any photo on your profile.
That's really like not give a shit. Yeah.
You're like, I can't.
Attitude, yeah.
It says I can't be bothered, right?
Yeah.
So I think that I think that would be the first thing there. Second is to really think about your company visually. Think about. And this isn't just to do with photography. This is actually to do with in person too. What's your personal presentation? Do you have a meeting space or a workspace, and what does that space communicate to the person? So one of the things that we do in our meeting spaces that we have is I really think about everything, not just the visual, but I actually think about the tactile. How does the chair feel to sit on?
Wow.
What's under their feet? What kind of pens are they going to get if they're signing contracts?
Really?
What? Absolutely.
That's awesome,
So
man.
if I want to communicate a really high level of quality, then everything that my client or potential client encounters within the space that I'm hosting them should reinforce that message of quality.
Yeah.
Right? So if I got a glass of water on the table, we've got some really beautiful glasses that are just gorgeous designs and very delicate. Now, when the client touches that, it feels like quality.
Yes.
And so they're not thinking about this stuff, but the message is constantly being reinforced
there.
internally. They're sitting there going, yeah, this is quality. This is good. And it's all very carefully constructed, and so it is visual, and so it doesn't necessarily, it's a visual thing, but doesn't have to just be photography. It's a visual exercise, and in this case, if it's in person, you're extending it to a tactile experience too. The other thing is I would think about.
So that's the tip number 1.
Well, there's kind of 2 and 3 there.
2 and 3, yeah.
Because one is the headshot. Two
Headshot
is the
first.
Visual presentation.
Visual
of
presentation.
both yourself and your space. We'll roll that into one, and then I'm gonna extend that out a little bit into the tactile space because I think when we're talking in person, and I realize that's a departure from photography, but I think it's important. And then, I would think about, how do you visually communicate what it is that you're doing? One easy way to do that is to go to your competition, have a look.
That's a great tip.
Just take a look at all your competition, which can be a really educational and at the same time totally disheartening experience, right? Because you look at the competition, you're like, oh shit, I should just quit right now.
Yeah.
But hopefully
sometimes
you look at that
it's just
and get
like
inspired. Right?
Yeah. Sometimes they're really bad.
Sure.
To have to be careful as well, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but what you're looking for there is you're looking for that visual language of do I understand what is going on here? Do I understand what they're doing? And you can even do this for other industries. In fact, you can do it for industries that you are very familiar with. Let's say there's a restaurant you really love, you'd like to go there. Go to their website and have a look at any of the material they're putting out. Does that visual material align with your experience of that business? Does it add to it? Does it improve it? Does it feel disconnected? Then you know it's probably not a great fit. And if you start to look at things like this, you really start to be better at interpreting a visual language for communicating what a company is doing. And then you can, of course, internalize that for your own business and think about what am I putting out there to communicate that.
Let me just find something here. I want to share something. This is great, and I'll recommend you to go and actually, if you want, just let's say just a quick tip here, because if you know some of the basic pillars of your brand, let's say. So we can go. I'll just try to find here. I'll cut this later. Okay, so I have a tip. If you want to start like with basic, let's say, if you are trying to find an image and you don't know exactly how to translate that image into the kind of business you have, you can use some of the elements that I used to use this when I was doing logos. So you have like masculine, feminine. You have young or mature, right? So you have luxurious or economic, modern or classic. You are playful or you're more serious. Another thing is noisy or quiet, because these are the things that totally makes different than in picture. You are simple, like minimalist, or is more complex. I think this, if we can use some of this, let's say, elements to at least to guide your search when you're starting to do some references, because references are really important.
Yeah.
You get reference from your competitors. You get references from even for your personal life. Like just go to your, maybe if you are Instagrammer, if you are, I don't know, like you're a coach, speaker, or whatever. Just go to your own image. What do you like? What represents your personality, right? If you're a solopreneur, and try to find those elements to actually translate who you are on the, let's say, your own database, let's say. So this is something.
And just to add to that, so another great piece of that puzzle is to think about your potential clients. What do they like? Not about your company, but what are they shopping for? Where are they eating? What are they doing? What kind of vacations do they take? What kind of homes do they live in? If you can really formulate a better picture of who those people are, then you can better cater the presentation of your company to those individuals, because you better understand where they're coming from. If you've got a high net worth potential clientele and you're presenting budget, here, look at my $99 special. It's really not going to appeal to those people. In fact, it's going to have the opposite effect. You're going to be perceived as some budget service or a product that is not really going to be of interest to them. So I think really understanding the behavior of your potential clients really helps you clarify how to present your company. And this can be a big challenge. I know we've thought about this before, and sometimes you go, well, I have all kinds of clients. I don't know what these people are like, and it is a difficult exercise. But if you can And unfortunately, it's easier to do in hindsight when you can look back over the last, in our case, 20 years and go, okay, well, these are the kind of clients we have. But looking forward, it is harder to do, but well worth the effort to try and identify who those people are. And then you want to appeal to those kinds of people. So
wow, that's awesome, Justin. I think if you know who you like to work most, like the best clients, you just add this to your website because you get what you ask for.
Yeah,
right. So I think you should do this. And the last tip that I have that I would say is just try to find your tribe. So if you are more like organic, kind of like a vegan, you're in this industry, right? So more natural. If you're trying to find if you find a flag like a tribe, it's easy for you to find images that are related to that, movement or something. Any final thoughts, Justin?
Final thoughts? Yeah, well, two things actually. If you're starting and running a company, especially in the early days, it is tough. It's tough in the work to kind of move it forward. And I'd like to say it gets easier, but I don't think that's quite the correct way of putting it. I think it gets more confidence inspiring. But I think that, one of the things that I always say, and people don't like to hear this because it puts them in an uncomfortable place. One of the best ways to make your business succeed is to have it as your only source of income. And it will absolutely have to succeed because you have to eat and you have to pay for your home. And what I think is part of our human nature is that sometimes when we have revenue from other sources or we take on that side job or whatever it is, it really pulls a lot of motivation for most people. Not everybody, there are exceptions to this, but for most people, it pulls a lot of motivation out of that drive to make it succeed. But nothing will make a business succeed more than having to eat and pay for your roof over your head.
That's great.
And it is a terrifying thing. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody feels comfortable with that idea. But I know in my case, I long time ago, cut it off. And we literally said, we have to make this work. There is no option. And we'll hustle as much as we need to hustle to make it work.
I'm a fan of that. Yeah. Life starts after the comfort zone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there you go.
Justin, all right, awesome, man. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. Your website, if someone wants to check it out.
Yeah, so my website is justineckersall.com. I'll spell that for you, JUSTINECKERSALL.com. And you'll find a nice range of commercial corporate work on there.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for listening. This is One Man Business Podcast. Hope you enjoy. I see you next week. I don't see you, but I'll hear from you. Check us on iTunes. We are on YouTube as well. And that's it. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thanks, man.
Cheers, man.
Goodbye.